I know I asked this question before, but I'm going to ask it again. Can you enjoy a movie that has absolutely no likable characters? Well, I watched a movie that was similar to that. The name of this movie is called I Care a Lot. It's a new movie on Netflix. It was number one today when I was checking it out, and I'm going to tell you what I think about it right after the intro. Welcome back to the DL Jones Book Show. I'm your host, DL Jones, and on this channel, if this is your first time visiting, I talk about all types of story-related topics. They could be topics that you would find in movies, TV shows, books, audiobooks, video games, and it could be topics about the items that you use to listen to or watch those story-related topics. This particular episode, I'm going to be doing like a quick little brief movie review of a movie that I watched yesterday. The name of the movie is called I Care a Lot. It stars Rosemond Pike from, if you remember that movie, Gone Girl, and it also stars Eiza Gonzalez and Peter Dinklage. Now, this particular movie, like I hinted to right before the intro, I kind of felt like this movie had no likable characters, and it was kind of odd. It was kind of odd watching the movie where just pretty much I'm rooting against everybody that ever appears on screen, the whole entire time. But yeah, that's how this movie was, so to give you a basic overview of what this movie's about, basically Rosamund Pike is sort of like some kind of counselor or something like that. And what she does, she's a con artist for one thing. And what she does is she finds like elderly people that are kind of don't have any family or anything like that are kind of fending for themselves. And she kind of works out a little deal with the doctor to where the doctor will deem that this person is unfit. And she takes them to court and gets the judge to assign guardianship to her. And what happens once that guardianship is assigned to her, then what she does is she put that person, the old elderly person, in like a facility, sort of like a home or something, and pretty much keeps her trapped in there. Put them in that home, put them on medication, and they pretty much take away their way to communicate with anybody, and pretty much, it's like a prison, but it's like in like an old folks home or something like that. And then what she does, since she has guardianship, she now has control over every aspect of that person's life. And what she does pretty much is go through and funnel all of that person's money into her account, take ownership of whatever property they own and sell it to make money. Basically, it's a con where she's just, pretty much putting people in a prison disguised as a, living facility and just basically taking all of their life's possessions, And it's a really horrible, despicable con, The whole point of this particular movie is that while Rosamund Pike is running the scam, she happens to pick pretty much the wrong woman. She goes and she does her research and she picks out her next, mark, and she does what she do. She find a way to deem that woman unfit, have that woman committed into her facility, and then she starts funneling all of that woman's possessions to her, But just so happens that woman, she didn't know that woman was somebody that you didn't want to do this kind of thing to. And that's where Peter Dinklage's character comes in. Peter Dinklage is that woman's son, and he's like some kind of gangster or something like that, like from the Russian mafia. There's a whole lot going on to him and the mother and everything. And the whole movie is basically a battle between Rosamund Pike and Peter Dinklage. He's trying to get his mother back, and she's trying not to give in to her little con. It's just a bad person himself. So you got two bad people, two people that in a movie by themselves, they would be the villain of that movie. But this movie, you got two villains pretty much, battling each other because they both, one want the mother back and the other one wants to continue to con, All right, so I sat down and started watching this movie. And right off the bat, the movie does like a really cringy, woke line dialogue thing coming from Rosamund Pike that almost turned me off. Almost had me turn the movie off. There's within the first 2 minutes of the movie. But I stuck through it. Those moments happened here and there throughout the movie, but it wasn't enough to where it made me, turn it off or anything. So I ended up watching the whole movie. But basically, throughout the whole movie, you follow Rosamund Pike's character. You're trying to figure out if she's going to get away with what she's doing. But at the same time, she's, what she's doing is bad. All I can think about is, the people that this is happening to. I've seen a few other movies that had similar situations where there's a person that is kind of admitted to a facility or something like that against their will, or they're tricked into doing it. And then once they're there, they're pretty much blocked off from the outside world, while, the people that's doing it to them are, taking advantage of everything they own, There's a couple of movies like that. It always makes me wonder, think about it like, that would suck to be in that situation. So right off the bat, you're looking at that part of it, and I'm kind of rooting against her from the beginning. I'm thinking that, she eventually finds out that the woman that she, her most recent con, you find out that this particular woman isn't who she says she was. She's living under a false identity, and you find out she's the mother of like a Russian, mafia person who's also living under a false identity. But you find that out and you're like, okay. She's the person who's trying to con the old lady is going to get hers, because she's conned the wrong person. But it turns out that the people that she conned, they are the wrong people, but they're also just as bad. So it's like, you don't know who you want to win. And the show kind of, goes back and forth as far as what the movie wants you to think, as far as who to root for and who do you think will win and stuff like that. But once I got past the idea of that, yeah, everybody in this movie are just bad. These are just two groups of bad people dealing with each other. I was able to enjoy the movie, and I thought it was pretty interesting. It was pretty interesting seeing, Rosamund Pike's character try to, battle with Peter Dinklage's character and the people that he sent out to try to get his mother back. Because it was good, because it was sort of like, sometimes it was like a battle of the wits. At one point, there was a situation where Peter Dinklage sent one of his lawyers to try to get, do things the legal way to get his mother back, because he wanted to get his mother back quietly without bringing too much heat on them, for doing this. But it didn't work. They tried to go through with the courts and stuff like that. But Rosamund Pike was actually really good as far as dealing with the judge and dealing with making sure that, her plan goes through. And the lawyer that he sent right at the beginning of the movie, the first third of the movie, it didn't work out. And once that happened, that's when he started getting into some gangster stuff, that's when people started getting killed and people started getting kidnapped and beat up and all of this kind of stuff. And they put Rosamund Pike at one point in a situation where I was like, okay, this is the end of it. This must be towards the end of the movie. She's about to get hers. It looked like it was kind of a no-win situation. But then it came to the problem I had. This was a problem that I had with the movie. At one point, Rosamund Pike and Eiza Gonzalez, they looked like they were about to, get it. They looked like they were about to pay for what they were doing, because what they were doing was bad, and it looked like they were about to pay for what they were doing. They both had been captured and targeted. Everything that they were trying to do, Peter Dinklage kind of seemed like he was a step ahead of them and he was figuring things out. And they kind of had Peter Dinklage look like he was like some kind of criminal mastermind. But once he caught the two, they pretty much did something silly. They put plans in motion to kill both of them, Rosamund Pike and Eiza Gonzalez, but they didn't follow through, and both of the plans fell through, which makes no sense to me. If somebody is supposed to be that much of a dangerous person, they build him up to be such a dangerous person, and he carried himself as being the person that was so in control and so much able to bring harm and get the job done. And then when it came time to get the job done, he fumbled on both accounts, it was a situation where Eiza Gonzalez and Rosamund Pike, they were both captured in separate situations and plans was put into play, but both of them just fell through. And they just fell through because the people who was carrying through the plans left too early. They left before they saw it finish, and they both kind of just fell through. And the part about that I didn't like is it's one thing if you have a person like that and they put the plans in motion, and the person that they're trying to kill or trying to capture or do whatever, and that person, use their smarts or use their brains or something, and they figure out a way to get out of it. It's one thing if that happens. I have respect for that when I watch a movie, but it wasn't like that with this. It was just like they were dead to rights, but his people, the plan that he set in motion to get rid of them, just fell through, like conveniently didn't work, by no doing of, the main characters. It just didn't work. It was at one point where they went through this whole, extravagant thing about planning, actually putting a tube through Rosemond Pike's nose and putting alcohol in her stomach and then putting her in a car and trying to set it up so it looks like she dies from a car crash, from drinking. But they don't follow through and it doesn't work. And she eventually just wakes up and breaks through the window of the car while it's, after it crashes and goes into the lake or whatever and swims out. And then with her girlfriend, it was a similar situation where they put a plan in motion, but they didn't go through and it just didn't work. Rosemond Pike shows up, and saves her because the thing that they set in motion, they didn't see it through and it just didn't work. The whole time I'm watching this movie, all I'm doing is I'm going back and forth, wishing that one side would win, 1 minute, then the next minute I'm wishing that the other side would win. But it never happened, And that went on throughout the whole movie for the most part, trying to figure out what they were going to do. They were both kind of like trying to outsmart each other, And then it just ended kind of like, nobody won. At the end, nobody won. Peter Dinklage, he got his mother back and everything, but he still lost a little battle of wits that he had going on with Rosemond Pike. And then Rosemond Pike, she didn't win. She pretty much just made a deal. And she ended up turning out, for the better after the deal. She ended up turning out, in a better situation than it was in first. So it was sort of like a unsatisfactory conclusion to their little rival, to their little battle going back and forth and everything. But of course, it ended with a satisfying ending. I'm not going to spoil it here, but yeah, you have to watch it to see how it ended. But what do I think about the movie? Like I said, it was, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the movie for the most part. I thought the little interaction between Peter Dinklage and Rosemond Pike, how they were trying to one-up each other, how they was, going back and forth, tit for tat. It kind of reminded me of like, the cartoon from the Mad Magazine, The Spy versus Spy, where they're both like, one time the black spy is blowing up the white spy, and then the next time the white spy is blowing up the black spy. It kind of reminded me of that. They were just going back and forth with stuff like that. Even to the point where at one point, when Peter Dinklage had the upper hand, he brought Rosemond Pike to a certain place. He had the upper hand in that situation. And then later on, when Rosemond Pike got out of that situation, she ended up going back to that same location, to do something there, So it was like they was even using the same locations for some of the stuff, But yeah, that was it. I kind of enjoyed it. I had problems with it, Some of the, every once in a while, they kind of threw in like a few cringy lines, the fact that I was just looking at it and didn't know who to root for because both of them were horrible people. Both sides were filled with horrible people. It was sort of like watching a train wreck or watching a car crash or something like that, But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed trying to, see how they're going to come up with what they were going to do next to get past the next obstacle and the obstacle after that. And I can't say that any of those situations where one did come out on top of that part of their little tit for tat, I can't say anything that happened in there was interesting. It wasn't like anything happened where I thought that individual thing was good, that it captured my attention or anything like that. It was spectacular or anything. I just enjoyed the back and forth, But yeah, that was I Care a Lot, and I would say it's worth a watch. It's a crime thriller, and it was pretty interesting watching them battle, wit for wit, trying to see who's going to come out on top was pretty interesting. Things that I like. I just wish they had like a clear good guy and a clear bad guy. They had a protagonist and an antagonist, but both of them were probably like villains, like two villains going against each other. I think on Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato score is like about 80. So, the critics like it. I think they like it a little bit more than I do, just looking at the score, looking at how many people recommend that movie as far as the critics on Rotten Tomatoes. But I do recommend to watch. I think it's pretty decent. movie if you like crime thrillers with like really weird stories where you got like two kind of, I would say, criminal masterminds, because that's the roles they play, but I wouldn't necessarily consider them masterminds. They kind of looked the part, but was kind of like bumbling a little bit. Everything they tried to do kind of like didn't work. Until they finally came to an agreement at the end. But yeah, that's I Care a Lot, and that's on Netflix now. And give it a watch. Check it out. Let me know what you think about it. If you have watched it, let me know what you think about it. Do you recommend it? Did you enjoy it? And how do you feel being that this movie just had all despicable characters? It was really nobody that you felt good rooting for in this movie. What do you think about that? If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button, click subscribe, and make sure you come back and check my next video. Later on this week, I'm gonna have another episode of WandaVision recap, and I will see you next time. Thank you for watching. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. While you're here, why don't you check out that video right there? Or maybe that one right there. And while you're at it, go ahead and click that little picture of my image there and subscribe to my channel.